All right, continuing on with the principles of design from where we left off, talking about those touch points and defining what is package design in relation to the visual and marketing aspect. So let's go ahead and hop in. So, thinking about again, we're visual problem solving. We're using creative skills that we have, conceptualizing, ideation, rendering a 2D flat thing to a three-dimensional design, analysis, and technical problem solving. So, all of that goes into this visual problem solving to resolve the design problem to meet a desired goal. And that desired goal is fulfilling that creative brief and making sure that the package design functions as best as it can for the brief and for the consumer that we're trying to reach. So, thinking about design elements and principles, these are all going to sound very familiar to you, but how they function in the 2D and three-dimensional space is a little different than how we're just used to viewing them on the screen. So, design concerns, thinking about layout, balance, so the placement that creates emphasis, contrast, so making sure we vary the weights of not strokes, but font sizes, scales, colors, etc., to create contrast, and then tension to stimulate visual interest. So, creating that kind of push and pull of the design to create areas of visual interest. So, if we take a look at these three examples here, we'll continue to compare these side by side. Think about the layout. This one has kind of a very centered, symmetrical feel with these repeating elements, strong focus here, and then we look here, so creating hierarchy through the typography and through placement. If we take a look at layout of this one, we've kind of got our eye drawing us through the left here around and then pointing to this information. So creating hierarchy by drawing our eye, but as well through the differences of the size and the styles of typography. Same thing over here, very much using this top segment of this bar for the most important areas of the layout and peppering that in with some very nice pattern illustrations, kind of more of a minimal style. So let's hop on over, continue to use this as a comparison piece. Other of those elements and principles, positive and negative space, value, so the difference between light and dark areas of a package will help draw our eye and draw attention. Thinking about things like visual weight, the size of things, shape and color of an element. Position, the placement of elements, right? Placement and layout were things that we just talked about. Alignment, the arrangements of visual elements in logical groupings. So, those logical groupings, we have the main information here, and then at the bottom we have the net weight information. So logically grouping pieces of text as well as elements, thinking about that logical grouping and alignment, the Fairlife mark and the USDA organic, those two are paired together because it makes sense for us to group those items together. Thinking about grouping, organic fair trade, creamy milk chocolate, right? Those things make sense being grouped together. And continuing on, thinking of things like texture, so the use of flat and graphic patterns, and the contrast of illustration and photography. And then when we're referring to printing and finishing processes, even the physical texture, so things like the emboss, the foil, things that might be raised or even de-embossed, things that might sink into the package itself. Those are all different versions of texture, but you can definitely create, as you guys can see, texture just through patterns and shapes like they're doing here and here. And then as well, thinking of hierarchy. So this is created by organizing visual elements by order, and hierarchy is going to be extremely, extremely important when we apply. So thinking about typographically, thinking about the objects on the package design itself, hierarchy is going to be extremely important because if everything looks the same, the viewer and consumer is not going to know where to look. Okay? So, and I apologize. I'm recording from home and my neighbor is mowing. So if you hear the dog, lovely little soundtrack. Also thinking about, again, those attributes: 80% raw, roasted organic, cocoa, and then again, the grouping of elements and hierarchy, right? So here, this is divine. We can clearly tell that that is supposed to be the name and the brand. And then pairing that with this serif that looks really nice and regal. Everything looks very formal, very ornate. This is probably kind of a more expensive chocolate, right? And in comparison to the ones that are a little bit more natural, so this one is organic, this one is organic. Think about minimalism, right? Like they're wanting to communicate that these are natural ingredients, so things have a little bit more of a minimal natural flow. Okay. And then thinking about objectives of package design, we need to ask questions. Whatever project that you're working on, ask questions and do your research. When you get a project, go into the store and just notice and see like how it lives on a shelf and how it competes against other items, right? So ask questions. And those questions are: who is the consumer, which is more likely probably your target audience? What environment will the product compete in? So where will it be? What price point will the product be set at? What are the production costs? And what is the time frame from design concept to market? So really, in the long scheme of things, timeline. How much time do you have? What's the budget? Which, in this class, we're not really concerned with budget. But if you are doing package design for a real world project, it's not just the time it takes you to design it. If you're doing wine labels and they have to print thousands of them, it's going to take a while to print thousands of those and get those actually on the wine itself. So not just design time, but production time that you have to be concerned with as well. And then the idea of shoppability, right? So this is how easy can a consumer find the product, and this is also directly impacted by the retail environment. I mean, take a look here. We've got antacids for days. How do you stand out? And you guys will notice that some of the colors are very similar, but some of the products are shaped differently, some of them are packaged differently. But how do you stand out in this sea of a market? And then thinking about factors that influence the success of a package design, the packaging design's obviously at the center, and then this is a great little mind map example. And then we have everything from the marketing, the consumer demographics, the brand positioning, kind of the more conceptual attributes. And then we have the team, right? We have the actual team that we're working with, the package designers, advertising and promotions. So, if you're working in an actual office setting, these are kind of the key players, the people that you have to work to complete the project with. So everything at this, package design is at the center of all of these things. And then jumping into elements of a package design, breaking that down a little bit more. When we refer to the elements of package design, we are concerned with one of the biggest concerns that we draw our attention to is the primary display panel, or you might hear me refer to it as the PDP. Okay, the primary display panel, as seen here in these coffee bags, is the area on the packaging design that's reserved for the brand identity and all of the primary communication elements. Typically, not always, but typically, this PDP is the front or the shelf side of a product. Okay, so let's unpack that a little bit. A well designed PDP communicates the marketing and brand strategy and message effectively and clearly. It presents information hierarchically, so most important, least important, and it's easy to read. Suggests the function, usage, and purpose visually. So coffee, house blend. So with coffee, it's pretty easy to communicate what the purpose coffee is for. But think of other things as well. If it's like something that you're supposed to, like a new product for coffee, like how do you communicate that? And then differentiates the product from the competition in relation to any other varieties. So thinking about suggesting the function and usage, when K-cups first came out, right? They had to really communicate what those were for. So if you look at a K-cup box versus a coffee bag, it will usually say compatible with Keurig 2.0 or whatever, and it is clearly marked K-cups, and it will say individual coffee pods, and that is to indicate, hey, this is not a bag of coffee; these are individual pods for the Keurig. So let's break down the PDP a little more. It represents itself appropriately and competitively in the category. It reflects the value perception of quality at a fair market price. And then it performs durably and is able to withstand shelf life and product use. Okay. Elements of package design, thinking about and we'll unpack these a little bit more as well in future talks, but just getting you guys the idea of the anatomy of package design. So, brand identity, which is the brand and product name, secondary copy, which is any additional information, the product descriptor, so farm roasted coffee, organic French roast, those are both product descriptors. Romance copy, or often called sale copy, so from our farm to your cup. So it speaks to how fresh it is, right? And then romance copy could also be something like creamy macaroni and cheese or savory. Anytime you have kind of those descriptive storytelling narrative elements, that is your romance copy. And then our mandatory copy: nutrition facts, weights, measures, net quantity, and ingredients. And different products have different mandatory copy. So food obviously has the nutrition facts and net weight, whereas, a vitamin would have different mandatory copy. Okay, so we are going to stop there, and that's kind of the overview of what is packaging design and the breakdown of packaging design elements.